There it is, the Soviet Union's last-ditch attempt to brainwash the youth of America. You know, if you ever look up the story of how Tetris came to be, it's a pretty cool tale. Like how Nintendo had to send people to Russia to find the creator, Alexei Pajitnov, in order to get the rights to Tetris. And since Russia at that point in time was still a part of the USSR and they didn't allow free enterprise, if they didn't find him before the Russian government did, then it would have been Tetris would have been state-owned and regulated by the government and probably never sold officially outside of the USSR. Or at least that's what I remember. There are actual, videos going over the details about this, but that's not my job today. Instead, we are here to discuss the merits of this game and how it became the enduring classic that it is. But before I do that, there are two things that I must get out of the way. The first is the fact that before Nintendo even owned the rights to Tetris, there were other versions released, even on the NES. Obviously, you have the versions that were created on the computer where it started its life, and then on the NES, you actually had I believe, an Atari company called Tengen, making essentially bootleg versions of it. And once Nintendo got the rights for the game, of course, the Tengen version would cease production. The other thing that I find funny about this version of Tetris is that it also had a release for the newly, released console or handheld console of the Game Boy. And as a launch title for one of Nintendo's biggest products ever, its Game Boy version is more well-remembered and more iconic than the NES version. And I think this is the only time in gaming history where the portable port was more popular than the home version. And before we move on, I actually just thought of a third funny thing, is the fact that Tetris is the only Russian video game. I mean, I know there's probably other ones, but it's the only one people think of when they think of a Russian video game. Which, I mean, it sucks that they only made one, but on the other hand, it's one of the most popular and most sold video games of all time, so they only got one, but they hit it out of the park. Alright, now with that whole preamble out of the way, let's actually start talking about Tetris for the NES. And to start that off, this game wholeheartedly embraces its Russian roots, both with the Kremlin being prominently featured in the title screen as well as the game's cutscenes, and through the music in the game, because it sounds exactly like you think 8-bit Russian music would sound like. That, and I could be wrong about this, but I believe the music tracks are actually 8-bit renditions of real music from Russia, although there is one very noticeable piece of music missing from this installment, which is the now iconic Tetris theme. You know, the one that goes da 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 da. And I really can't think of any reason why it's not here other than maybe they didn't expect this to, that to become the theme of Tetris, or they ran out of space. Alright, with that done, let's get into the gameplay now. And how you play is you're given a board and a bunch of blocks are falling down, and you need to continuously stack them up and then make a line across in order to get rid of them. Blocks such as squares, lines, L's, and a T. And you can rotate them around, move them, do whatever you need to clear them out. But if you keep stacking them and not clearing enough lines to the point of it reaching the top of the screen, then it's game over, man. And this obviously gets harder the longer you go, because every time you clear a certain amount of lines, the game changes color and you go into a new level. And every new level you go into, the blocks start falling faster. And it doesn't help that the blocks are always random, and the fact that this Tetris is before the time of the hold option, which allows you to hold onto a block to be used later. So yeah, you really gotta be on your toes at all times to, do well in this game, and hope that you can manage to get the blocks to where you want them to, and not to somewhere where they could screw you up. And one last thing that I just realized is that even though this game has scoring in it, There is no, like, extra lives that you can unlock at, like, 10,000 points or whatever. You mess up once, you hit the top, it's over. No second chances. And basically the bottom line of Tetris is that it's an easy game to learn, but almost impossible to master. And I do believe that easy to learn, like, factor allowed this game to elevate to such a level where not only kids were playing it on their Game Boys and NESs, but also, like, regular adults. And even me, who's not all that great at puzzle games, can't help but love this game. I mean, I really can't pull off advanced moves such as a T-spin into a gap, like past gaps, and when it just gets too fast, I get too overwhelmed and I just end up screwing up and getting a game over. But despite all this, I would still say that I love Tetris, whether it's on the NES or the Game Boy or on your phone or on an Xbox. It's just the ultimate classic puzzle game. It is easy to see why this is truly an enduring classic that throughout the many years has barely been tweaked in the gameplay department. Although the tweaks in themselves aren't half bad, such as the challenge mode found in this version of the game. In this mode, you are trying to clear 25 lines, and you can add in like a bunch of clutter at the bottom of the screen that you must get rid of or keep controlled so you don't hit the top of the screen. And yeah, it is a neat little twist on the regular formula that you can jump over to time when you're getting bored of the regular game mode, or if you want to just shake things up. But yeah, that's all I gotta say about Tetris for the NES. It's still a great puzzle game all these years later, as well as just a great game in general. Well, in the end, the Soviets may have failed in trying to brainwash any Americans, but they did succeed in making a whole bunch of money. So much so that they actually managed to extend their lifespan by 2 more years. Go USSR. And that's upside down. Whatever. So here's a neat little factoid that I learned about this version of Tetris while making this video. Originally it was going to have a 2-player component, but it never got in because of like time constraints, I'm pretty sure. And it's still like partially in the game or whatever, like you can access it through a Game Genie. But I bring this up because apparently that version made by Atari, the Tengen version, it had multiplayer, so it's like Nintendo just got one-upped by Atari.